We're back. Welcome to another 420 East Coast. Happy 420.
Oh, we were going to watch the launch.
Yeah, so we originally we were going to watch live stream the SpaceX launch where they're actually going to launch people, but which was scheduled to launch in about 13 minutes from now, but they just got a weather update saying they weren't cleared to launch. So the launch has been postponed. Which, you know, better to be safe.
Yeah, I was like, oh, we're going to watch it live. I hope it's not like my first grade watching live experience.
But yeah, I'm sure we've learned a lot about space safety since then. So anyways,
yeah, the rocket had been made this trip about I think 20 times at this point. So
amazing.
They knew how it would.
And we used to just shoot rockets and dump them in the ocean or in space. So we have some other breaking news to cover. Developments from the Minneapolis mayor about, what's his name? George
Floyd.
George Floyd. So let's take a look at that instead.
This is breaking news from WCCO.
Hello, everyone. Right now, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry has taken the podium to update us on the investigation into the death of George Floyd. Let's listen in.
Mayors can shape events in their city, but more often than not, it's events in our city that shape us.
This guy looks like someone who's playing a mayor. I get what you mean.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, is this a parody? Is it Saturday Night Live?
No, this is like, yeah.
You know, he's a real mayor in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, so they fired the 4 police officers and
they
then
needed to charge them with murder.
Yeah, so let's see. I guess they're opening up a death investigation. I think that's what this is about.
There are precedents and protocols sitting in the reserves of institutions just like this one that will give you about 1,000 reasons not to do something, not to speak out, not to act so quickly. And I've wrestled with, more than anything else over the last 36 hours, one fundamental question. Why is the man who killed George Floyd not in jail? If you had done it, or I had done it, we would be behind bars right now. And I cannot come up with a good answer to that question. And so I'm calling on Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman to act on the evidence before him. I'm calling on him to charge the arresting officer in this case. We cannot turn a blind eye. It is on us as leaders to see this for what it is and call it what it is. George Floyd deserves justice. His family deserves justice. The black community deserves justice.
That's pretty that's pretty promising.
Murdered on TV. Like, why are people walking free?
Yes, but usually, I mean, granted, nothing would happen because, you know, police forces are kind of like their
originally it was paid
autonomy.
Leave.
Right.
Remember?
And
paid
then
leave.
These guys got fired, which we were surprised yesterday. We're like, oh, okay. So the mayor is actually he is very serious about actions following what he says, right?
He said that, and we were like, okay, we'll see. Like, what do you do?
And so he's even taking it a step further now and opening up like an investigation. He's saying these men should be charged. And it's a little like, it's refreshing to hear that because it's like, yes, but then it's also kind of sad to hear that because it's like, oh, he's kind of setting a precedent now that these things should be taken seriously by like,
of course, yeah,
right. And it's like, that's why it's like,
otherwise it'll get worse.
I'm very happy to see it, but it's like, it's kind of depressing because it's like, he's like now the standout, but you know, hopefully it sets a precedent for other mayors to follow.
And our city deserves justice. I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, so we don't have to cover the questioning.
We're not supposed to be scared of our police.
Anyways, so that's a great update that they're opening up an investigation.
Investigation?
Well, he's saying they should be charged, and he's asking the Attorney General of the county to look at the evidence. And so
They should be charged.
it's refreshing to see political allies for underrepresented communities. All right, so should we go over happy U.S. news or sad U.S. news? I mean, it's kind of not happy. So I thought this was interesting. Wait, let me start with this. So I saw this, and it was kind of a confusing headline, but it says, U.S. says Hong Kong's autonomy is gone, sowing China trade doubt. So it's like, what does that mean? Is the U.S. not recognizing Hong Kong as a country?
Or they're recognizing that there's laws and stuff being changed.
Yeah. And so what this article said from Bloomberg, the Trump administration said it could no longer certify Hong Kong's political autonomy from China, a move that could trigger sanctions and have far-reaching consequences on the former British colony's special trading status with the U.S.
Yes. Remember when they carted off those people in the, what is that called? Their house? Or I forgot, but I was just like, oh, so that they can take that vote.
Yeah.
We covered
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Remember?
They took out a lawmaker so they can put someone in the seat. So Secretary of State Michael Pompeo announced the decision Wednesday, a week after the government in Beijing declared its intention to pass a national security law curtailing the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong citizens. Hong Kong does not continue to warrant treatment under United States laws in the same manner as U.S. laws were applied to Hong Kong before July 1997, Pompeo said in a statement. No reasonable person can assert today that Hong Kong maintains a high degree of autonomy from China, given facts on the ground.
Yeah.
So
So the sanctions we have on China are going to now be put on Hong Kong?
it seems like it. It's like we can't treat Hong Kong as a...
I mean, what are our sanctions with China anyways? I thought
Well,
openly
let's
protect-
finish with their quote.
Oh.
The United States stands with the people of Hong Kong as they struggle against the CCP's increasing denial of the autonomy that they were promised, Pompeo said, referring to the Chinese Communist Party. So it's... I'm a little surprised, I guess, to see the U.S. take a stance on this because it seems like...
I think they...
why
did
get
a lot
involved?
of, exchange with Hong Kong, like lots of money.
Yeah, but it's been... Okay, so it says China has warned that it would retaliate if the U.S. put sanctions on Hong Kong or interfered in its affairs. If anyone insists on harming China's interests, China is determined to take all necessary countermeasures, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian told reporters on Wednesday. The national security law for Hong Kong is purely China's internal affair that allows no foreign interference. So they clearly don't see Hong Kong as separate. Okay, so this is the security law that got passed last week that made the U.S. Take a stance, and why the protesting has kind of been building up. So what is the law about? First of all, nothing is set in stone yet. What China has submitted is a draft resolution to its rubber stamp parliament that will be voted on and almost certainly passed this week. Only after that will it be fleshed out into an actual draft law. So the details are thin, but we know this much. A law would make criminal any act of secession, breaking away from the country, subversion, undermining the power or authority of the central government, terrorism, using violence or intimidation against people, activities by foreign forces that interfere in Hong Kong. One part that has got people worried is the suggestion that China could set up its own institutions in Hong Kong responsible for security. So basically, they
Their own
send in...
internal police,
Yeah.
military.
Exactly. So, continuing on. Why are people in Hong Kong afraid? As the law has not even been drafted yet, it is hard to be concrete. But essentially, people in Hong Kong fear the loss of these freedoms. China expert Willie Lam is concerned the law could see people punished for criticizing Beijing, as happens in mainland China. So, yeah, one, the freedom of speech will be taken away. People believe this will affect free speech and their right to protest. In China, this would be seen as subversion. Some pro-democracy activities such as Joshua Wong activists such as Joshua Wong have been lobbying foreign governments to help their cause. Such campaigning could be a crime in the future. So it's basically the national security law was just a way to make what the people of Hong Kong were already doing illegal. Many are also afraid Hong Kong's judicial system will be like China's. Almost all trials, including national security, are conducted behind closed doors. It is never clear what exactly the allegations and the evidence are, and the term national security is so vague that it could cover almost anything, Professor Johannes Chan, a legal scholar at the University of Hong Kong, says.
Guess what they learned their tricks from?
Russia, obviously. Just kidding. So can China push this through? Oops. So can China push this through? The basic law says Chinese laws can't be applied in Hong Kong unless they are listed in a section called Annex 3. There are already a few listed there, mostly uncontroversial and around foreign policy. These laws can be introduced by decree, which means they bypass the city's parliament, and Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, has already said she will cooperate.
Oh, that's why Hong Kong people don't like her.
Yeah.
Like, she's just a sellout.
So Keir says, those riots are looking pretty heated over there.
Again, I mean, before the pandemic, they were like shooting live rounds into protesters.
Well,
we don't know where they put all the prisoners still.
Yeah, so that's a perfect segue into our clip. We have some clips of the HK police, and this is just from the last week. This isn't even all of the clips. It's just what's been happening since the national security law started to become popularized. See, one of these sides have gunpowder, and the other sides just has debris. They're shooting.
They're the receiving end of the spent ammo.
These guys all have swords. I mean, shields. It says thousands protested against Beijing's planned national security law for the city. And so in the midst of social distancing, which actually kudos to them because they actually have it under control. They don't have any new cases, except for, I guess, people that come in. But, you know, their freedom is more important than, I guess, so many gathered.
It's not like they're protesting wearing masks.
So many gathered in Causeway Bay for a march to Wan Chai in the afternoon. And they denounced the proposed legislation as a threat to civil liberties.
One nation! One Hong Kong!
Some said it marked the end of one nation, two systems.
Now it's two countries, one system.
One country, one system. Police warned protesters to disperse. Oh my goodness. I think they started, protesters spread along roads in Causeway Bay and Wan Chai. Or they spread out, and I think they began putting those things so the cops couldn't follow them.
In vehicles and like that.
Yeah, some set up roadblocks using dismantled railings and other materials.
They're smart. They know how to use, they know how to dismantle or what's in the tear gas and stuff. Cover them.
It's just insane. It's like warfare against people. Like, police also
People
deployed
who are
water
living there.
cannon to disperse people.
These are dangerous.
But it's like they're protesting peacefully. I mean, I don't know.
But China wants to make it illegal. This is disruptive, is what they're saying.
Bricks and plastic bottles were thrown from a building at the police.
They like call it war, but it's like who came with all the war equipment?
Yeah, who's the only one shooting paintballs? Someone threw something at that guy. That guy's like, chill out.
They walk calmly when they know their food.
A video circulating online showed a man was attacked.
Oh my god.
I don't.
Police said he was stopped by people who were building a roadblock and got into an argument.
Oh shoot.
哇，黐線㗎嗰人。
The city's Law Society confirmed that the victim was a member.
Oh my god.
What's a member mean?
It also condemned the attackers, a member of the Law Society.
Oh my gosh.
Hundreds were refusing to leave Causeway Bay after 4 p.m., so 3 hours after they started shooting tear gas, they're still there.
I don't seriously care. You are a fucking gun.
Police stopped and searched dozens outside a department store. They said at least 180 people were arrested.
At least they don't have to worry about the face recognition stuff now that everyone's wearing masks.
Well, once you get arrested, they take it off, though.
I know, but you can't recognize
Oh my gosh. All these broken windows. The protest came 2 days after a resolution on the national security law was presented. The new law would allow mainland agencies to operate in Hong Kong. The resolution is expected to be passed by China's parliament on May
Tomorrow?
28th.
tomorrow.
Yeah. We talk about...
And they already carted off different people who would have voted. I'm sure. In a way they wouldn't like.
Oh, man. Today's a really short day. We're already on our third story.
Really? Oh, because we were going to watch the launch.
Yeah, the SpaceX launch got postponed. It's not our fault.
Oh. Yeah, so when are they going to try again? It has to be
In a month?
while, huh?
I guess so. All right, moving on. You want to see how the American economy's collapse is now irreversible?
Someone says it's irreversible.
Well, it's discussed by Dylan Radigan and Jimmy Dore, but someone else wrote the article. Let's take a look.
So let's bring in our friend of the show, award-winning reporter, best-selling New York Times author, former host of his own show on MSNBC, and he's here and also on the new podcast, Truth or Skepticism, with Tom Sosnoff at Tasty Trade. It's Dylan Radigan. Hi, Dylan. How are you?
No, I love getting the little inside Hollywood tips.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I do this show.
That's right. Umair Haq has written another article that is even more depressing and ominous than his last one. And the headline...
It's hard to conceive of.
It's
Umair
hard to
Haq
conceive, but he did it.
Is his name.
Here he
who wrote
says...
this
Tries
article.
hard. He's a Harvard guy, so he's skilled. He really works at it.
So we're going to go through some of it. It's a very long article. I pulled out some paragraphs we'll read.
Medium has a lot of...
The headline is, "It's not that I'm negative. America really is screwed. Why economists say America's collapse is probably irreversible." So here, let's get into it. The economics of American collapse say that it's probably too late to fix America. It's probably that this is the new normal. Chaos, decline, incompetence, malice, poverty, hopelessness, and despair. That's the new normal. Now, the reason that America collapsed is straightforward. Americans never invested in building expansive social systems. Unlike Europe, systems to provide health care, retirement, child care, finance, and so forth. The result has been twofold. One, the average American now goes without these things. That's because they're largely unavailable. For example, the fresh food that I can get on any block in Europe is simply absent in huge chunks of the United States. You buy processed food or you don't get food. The same is true of many, many things, like, say, education or income. You don't have a job with guarantees and protections like in Canada or Europe. You have a lower quality, not just quantity of income. 2, the average American pays prices that the rest of the world considers absolutely absurd, because they are, for the very same things. Having a child, that'll be $50,000. An operation, that'll be more than a house. You want to educate your kid, there goes your life savings. You want some fresh apples, that'll be 10 times the price Canadians or Europeans pay. These things, the basics of life, are eminently affordable in the rest of the rich world. In America, though, they cost more than the average person can afford. Sure, they might have a big car and a big house and a big gun, but the economic truth is this: all those things are had on debt. And the average American now lives like an impoverished person. No savings, no assets, no liquidity. 80%, that's 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, struggle to pay basic bills, and can't raise $500 for an emergency. Those are the statistics of a nation having descended into poverty. The economists say that America has more or less, almost certainly, reached a point of no return, and collapse is nearly inevitable. To stop collapse, America would have to start investing massively, suddenly, historically in functioning systems. Every single facet of American collapse requires massive, large-scale, sustained public investment to be turned around. That goes on for a decade or more. The bitter truth is this: Americans are now too poor to afford a better social contract. Even if Americans support a Canadian or European-style social contract, the hard economic truth is that they are probably now too poor to ever even have one. Americans didn't want to pay those higher taxes Europeans and Canadians did. They believed the strange, foolish, and evidence-free ideologies of trickle-down economics and neoliberalism and all the rest of it. We'll all be the richest if we invest in precisely nothing together. Nobody should care about anyone else. Nobody should ever support anyone else in the pursuit of anything. Life was to be purely individualistic, adversarial, and acquisitive. That led Americans straight into a poverty trap. They were paying lower taxes, sure, but their public goods were decaying. Their commonwealth was eroding. Their systems and institutions were corroding. To achieve European or Canadian-like living standards, how much would America have to invest now? Probably dozens of trillions. Much, much more than average Americans all put together can afford to spend right now.
Get on it, J-Pal.
Those are the brutal economics of collapse. Societies who let themselves become poor can hardly then wave a magic wand and become rich. It's too late for America to recover. It left it too long. It was arrogant and conceited, paying for things it didn't need, like wars and mega mansions, but not the things that it did need. So it didn't invest when it should have. But now the bill is due, but nobody can pay it. What would you call a society like that? Bankrupt? Just like most Americans are, only they don't know it yet. What do you call a whole society of people, after all, who die in debt? America's broke, my friends, and when you're broke, what do you have left to invest in yourself? There's one way to get out of this, by the way. If you followed me closely, give people money. No strings attached, no questions asked. Now and on a large scale, more or less permanently, forget how much needs to be borrowed to make it happen so people can fund a working society again, or else. That's the big question for America. The rest is noise. Until something along those lines begins to take shape, my answer is simple. Americans made themselves too poor to now afford to have the luxury of a functioning, civilized, modern society. Or is all that a necessity? So there's the, all right.
So that's interesting because I feel like we've went through like this season where, or just years where we thought taxes were bad. And he's saying because of that mindset, our public goods were decaying. And now to like catch up to where like Canada or Europe is, it would cost us $12 trillion. And so that's why in perspective,
they had been investing decades ago. When
well,
it
I
was
think
less, and it actually compounds.
after the war, after World War II, Europe was forced to recover in a way where everyone was poor. But the U.S. hasn't really gone through that in a long time, and except maybe like 100 years ago. And so it's like when you talk about the number like 12 trillion to get us back to it, whereas UBI or Universal Basic Income is like $350 a month if everyone, or $350 billion a month if everyone gets. It's like
350 billion.
That's like 4 trillion a year, just over 4 trillion a year. And so it's like at this point, giving people money is cheaper. Like 2 years of UBI until like a coronavirus gets out is $4 trillion cheaper than trying to get our system set up. But even it's not going to solve anything though, even with UBI. We're just going to keep continuing on. I guess that's what they mean by this is the new normal. It's just a two-class system. There's going to be really poor people and really rich people in the United States. All right, well, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Now let's break it down with Dylan Radigan. Come on. There's no way.
I mean, he's a little too pessimistic, but I think that it's really important to read and understand what Umair is saying, to understand what is we're on a trajectory for what he's describing. And I'm not willing to accept what he's saying as a certainty for this country.
He's like, that guy's too
but
pessimistic.
I think it's important to understand what he's saying so that you can understand the risk of what's at stake right now, and understand how simple really, just, I mean, I don't know how many times we have to say Medicare for all and universal basic income, but I mean, the tragedy of the current situation is how simple it would be to fix were it not for the political stranglehold. Maybe I have a smidgen of my own, perhaps naivete that wants to believe that there is some aspect of resilience in the because there's so much consensus in the American people that the government has failed. Because there's so much clarity, whether the polls are at 65 to 80% in terms of the indictment of both parties, in terms of the support for a national health care system, in terms of a support for massive voter reform. I feel like when there's so much consensus inside the American people, I don't know how it manifests itself to your. I realize I'm missing the final connection to how that sentiment converts into real meaningful reform of some kind. But it's hard for me to see how 3 to 4 out of 5 people could understand what's being done to them and do nothing about it unless the media and the politicians are so successful at pointing those people at each other as the culprit, as opposed to allowing them to line up against the politicians, which is sort of what the primary purpose of the media is, to make sure that you think it was the other side.
Exactly.
So that's a good point. It's like he's saying there's a consensus on things that are wrong, but he's saying like he doesn't really see how that translates into action in the United States. And he says, where like 3 or 4 out of 5 people like agree that like the economics in the United States are messed up.
Yeah.
What gets to them before they can get together is the politicizing of it. Like, how did wearing masks become political in the United States, where everyone else in the world just kind of has like figured it out? And it's an influence that it's of like that pointing fingers, where it's like they're the cause of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So then there's no like resolution.
Not in a way that costs the politicians anything.
That's exactly what's happening. Every time my phone rings and it's somebody from my family or my old college roommate, they're all screaming about Trump. It's working perfectly. As the Democrats love to have Trump because he's their number one fundraiser. CNN loves to have Trump because their ratings are through the roof, which means their profits are through the roof. Everybody loves to have this broken system, and nobody wants to fix the system. They want to talk about the symptom of it, which is Donald Trump.
The ones that are for are the ones making money for it, and they're the ones that have the power to change it. Of course, they're not going to change it because they're still making money from it. What's the incentive then for them to change the system?
Yeah. If you make money from the status quo, you don't want to change the status quo.
I guess if some of them who are like, they don't care about money, but they really do care about, like, I don't know, they worry about what's going to happen to their grandkids.
Yeah, but those people are, there's so many votes. Those people are probably outnumbered.
So you're right. People do understand it's broken, but then they go to their media and their media tells them it's the Republicans. And then the other media tells them it's the Democrats. And that's the beauty of this two-party system. Chinese. If you're a rapacious oligarch, you can do this forever because they've been doing it forever. And it works like a charm. And
it's so good.
It is such a great con. And then to get a guy like Bernie Sanders to make sure there's never a third party that's viable that forms. What a brilliant strategy by those people to use him like that. What a beautiful strategy. And he plays it like to a T. Even right now, he's staying on the ballot. Instead of rising up, saying Joe Biden's demented and saying, give me the goddamn nomination because I have the solutions to our problems right now. Right now, he's gaslighting his own followers, telling them that Joe Biden has the solutions to our problems. And the only problem we really have is Donald Trump. It is a mental situation that's happening right now. It's how we go. It's how our country collapses. And by the way, we're in a collapse. What do you call a country where 80% of the workers live paycheck to paycheck? That's a country to me that's already collapsed. That's a failed system. That's what I've been saying for years on this show. What do you call a system that takes the richest country in the world and makes 80% of its workers live paycheck to paycheck? You call that a failed system. It's time to start over. And there isn't a politician saying that, is there?
That's insane. 80% live paycheck to paycheck. 4 out of 5 people have no savings, no assets. Like they can't get $500 together. Like,
a lot of people believe they do because they've got like a mortgage. And
no, they have debt.
Yes, that's
I know, different.
That's the difference.
That's not
So a lot of people, because you're allowed.
An asset is something you can sell. You can't sell your debt.
But you live. They are tricked. Thinking that because I have this asset, because I have this and this and this. But it's like, how many years of debt have you signed on to that's making it like where it's actually not? But they can list it as an asset always once you have it. That's how you can work your credit.
If it can be repossessed, it's
like if you do something where it's like you go bankrupt.
So when he says we need to start over because it's like a failed system, 80% are living paycheck to paycheck. What does that look like?
It looks like
do we just have to let the economy correct? Like, how did? Well, I guess he just has to do research because it's like, how did the Great Depression resolve? Did people just let it crash and then the government had to step in?
No, God, no. The politicians are all about blaming the other side. We all know that. I mean, listen, it's hard for me to rebut your pessimism just as it's hard for me to rebut Umair's pessimism, especially because my own reporting tends to reinforce your narrative or Umair's narrative. I simply hang on to the belief that when that many people understand the issue, that something less terrible might occur. But again, that may be a function of my own delusion, and you make an extremely valuable point, which is when 80% of the people live paycheck to paycheck, you've already arrived at the destination.
We're
You're
already
not
there.
waiting to be a failed state.
Right, we are.
You're a two-class society of the rich and the poor. And
so that's a good question then. If he considers this a failed state, by what metric do you measure a healthy state? By the amount of people who are financially healthy?
All the people that they're independent, so they don't need any state help, government help. They're not reliant on the government for things that like
but isn't
retirement and stuff. Like the government and the way that
isn't that what Americans try to do? They don't want government help.
I know. That's why we're a failed state, because although people are trying to do that, they can't seem to get out of it. Like they keep getting stuck in either these crashes.
I know. So I'm saying, what does a healthy state look like? Are there any healthy states in the world?
Oh yeah, like that's why they say like the European and Canada and stuff. It's like even though people complain about the living expenses in Toronto and stuff with this big like, they're still they're not going bankrupt over medical like.
Yeah. So is the measure of a healthy state the financial well-being of its citizens?
Right.
Okay.
Because the government's the one that's in charge of how the money,
So
their
China-
currency is used and run. Like they're the ones that write the legislation. They're the ones that are in charge
Yeah. So
of the banks.
China is like lifting millions of people out of poverty. Does that mean according to the metric of how many people you have financially well off in your state, does that mean China is a more successful state than the United States?
By world measures, people say yeah. By lots of different measures.
And they have like 8 times the population or something. They have like way more people than us. Anyways, all right, let's keep going.
The government works as the employee of the rich on the belief that the poor shall never revolt, basically.
I mean, it's one thing that
as
it's
long
one
as
thing.
they don't recognize.
It's the movie.
don't know.
It's the movie of Bug's Life. If you've ever seen A Bug's Life, that's what goes on in America. We are ruled by a class of grasshoppers who are super rich, and we are the ants. We outnumber them,
They tried
but
to
only
teach me this in Cuba.
only if we work
Like,
together.
oh, sorry, too late. I've already been brainwashed by the Americans.
Yes, if you want,
Maxed out.
if you want to understand American politics, just watch A Bug's Life. Okay, let's keep going.
Have a poor society where everyone has health care and education. That's one thing. But to have a country where everyone's poor and they're constantly scrambling for health care, constantly scrambling to educate their children, constantly scrambling to pay their bill. I mean, I see it, you know, it's people are, that's why our life expectancy is going the other way. That's why suicides are up.
Yeah, do you have, like, I don't have health insurance. Do you have health insurance? We get health insurance through our state, but not everyone lives in California. So we're better off than most people. But then even for me, I don't ever plan on seeing a doctor. I'm just like, if something really goes wrong.
Emergency. Yeah, we go to the emergency room.
So that must seem insane to people who live in like Canada or Japan. They're like, what? You can't just go to the hospital? It's like, no.
Do you have $10,000?
Yeah.
Do you get insurance?
I would have to sell all of my electronics and my car. All right, let's go on.
What's your copay? Even when I had insurance, I'm like, do I have money for a copay? What's my
Right.
deductible? And they're like, what's your deductible? Health insurance has deduct. Like they're thinking maybe you're just talking about car insurance or.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, this is for health. And it's like, how is?
It's like toll roads. If you live in a place where you have freeways and you have to go to a place where you have to constantly pay to use the roads, you're like, why?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a private industry. All right, let's keep going.
And by the way, you know, Dylan, let me ask you this. People like to blame China is our economic enemy and they're imperialists now and we have to look out for them. Isn't it the fact, Dylan, that is the system that the United States set up? We set up this system where we outsource all our manufacturing and our basically economy to China. Even Silicon Valley gets all their stuff made in China by low-wage workers. Didn't we? Jack Ma was the person who made this observation. He is the Jeff Bezos of Asia. Yeah. And he said it wasn't China who did this. It was the United States businessmen who set up this system, and now you guys want to blame China. Isn't that what's happening?
That's absolutely, that's absolutely the case. I mean, I've said this before. I mean, I said this in my book. I went into details of this in the book. I devoted a lot of time with my journalism to this very subject. The core issue is that U.S. multinationals, Apple, Nike, companies like this, use their control of our government to exploit the profitability of the cheap labor in Asia for their enrichment while not paying taxes in America. So they gutted the American labor force, they leveraged the Chinese labor force, and they withheld the tax revenue from the whole process while collapsing the middle class. China didn't do that to America. Apple and Nike did that to America.
So I think
America did it to America.
this is why Trump
America is that way.
is so refreshing as a politician, because he'll call it out. But none of the
Because he doesn't know what he's not supposed to say.
But he said, like, we've been, well, he's a little more manipulative though, because he'll still pivot it in a way where China's the enemy, because he's like, we've been getting ripped off by China.
When he needs to.
Right. No, but those are his words. We've been getting ripped off by China. And it's like, well, yeah, but we did the ripping off on ourselves. And it's like we
get mad and call it them ripping us off when they have the upper hand, but when we have it, we'll just call it like we're just negotiating.
But it's not even they have the upper hand. At least the corporations in America were exploiting their cheap workforce while taking it out of America and not paying taxes on it. And so they won in like 3 ways.
They wanted to get profit. They wanted to be profitable, but you can only go so far, and it's before.
Well, but this is the thing. It's like we can't blame them for the globalization or whatever enemy that we see them now economically when we set them up that way. We're the ones that
did that. Yeah, we set the stone in motion.
We joke about how many things are made in China, but it's like how many U.S. companies went to buy from China. That's the issue. It's not that China makes a lot of things. It's just that the demand was there because America moved the manufacturing there.
And even people who try to build and make stuff here, they can't compete with the people who are importing their stuff. And their companies even look like they're American companies, but everything's coming from China. Like we can't beat the pricing in the manufacturing.
Yeah, and that's really where it becomes a government failure, because government is the only institution that can regulate trade. Come on, government, get it together. Okay, let's keep going. 3 minutes left.
And so it seems like to me then the propaganda around China right now is just that, no?
Well, sure. I mean, China is hostile to American interests insofar as it is looking out for its self-interest, and it views itself as one of the great powers of the world, if not the greatest power in the world, if you were to ask them. So they're going to behave in a way that is in that same primal, acquisitive, imperial fashion, which is really exemplified by the United States. But the thing that happened was the U.S. multinationals, led by Nike and Apple, empowered China to their imperial tendencies at our expense, because it was to the benefit of American corporations, even if it's to the detriment of the United States.
That's I just realized something even scarier. It's not that the U.S. empowered China. It's that corporations have the ability to empower any government by taking their business there.
Yeah, why do you think that's why we said it's so hairy in U.S. because business has such, and corporations and money has such a strong say in our legal stuff. And it's like, it's like that anywhere.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this for a long time. It's like a lot of people still bring up the separation of church and state, and they're like, build this wall, or, there's like things. And I think we're entering now a period where the next social revolution is going to have to be a separation of like corporation and state. And it's like these corporations now have such a strong influence that they can like literally build up like another country's economy in like a decade or 2 decades.
Right.
So it's not to say that China, like, is an alligator good or bad?
Oh.
That alligators.
And they also taught them, because some of the biggest things we had issues with when we were getting stuff from China as a company that manufactured parts, and like some of the parts, the cheapest you could get was out of China, but it's because those companies, those American companies went there, those big ones, they gave them a good template for quality control. And so we were starting to get even better stuff. So a lot of people before, like a couple decades ago, would have been like, oh, if it's from China, it must be bad quality. But now they're competing on quality too. That's why I was talking
all
about
the
upper
iPhones
hand.
are made
Now
there.
people don't care if it's made in China. You know what I mean?
Well, I think people understood from the beginning, anything can be made in China. It's a quality control that.
Yeah, but now they do ISO standard manufacturing.
Yeah.
They do like all these kinds of
Yeah,
things.
you
So
have to
they're
pay for
able
it, but it's there.
Yeah, but paying for it there is, again, way
But I think
cheaper than paying for it here. And they know once they get qualified, then they can distribute to.
Right, and I think once
everywhere.
big business moves into there and they build the factories that have to manufacture them, at that point, the companies in China that are manufacturing, they don't care who's buying from them. So they'll sell as many as they want to whoever wants to buy it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
because
so
they're all about produce and
once
sell and produce
the
and
big
sell.
businesses move in there, it's much easier for the smaller businesses then to put their order after they figure out how to make them. And that's why it's like
that's
this.
how I would always source my stuff. I would piggyback because you can get that bulk price for so much cheaper, and it's so much cheaper to fill their cargo ships to get it across than to leave it empty.
Yeah,
that's how I got my stuff here cheap, faster too. Find a little corner that was empty, and they needed to fill it before they shipped it.
So Dylan Radigan was saying, is China good or bad? And then he was comparing it to an alligator.
Good
He's
or
like,
bad?
China's
It's
like an
like, what is
alligator.
it?
Is an
It's
alligator
gonna do
good or
what it
bad?
does.
No, it's
Yeah.
an alligator, right? So that's where we are.
Alligator, right?
Right.
Well, if you're feeding puppies to the alligator, is it the alligator's fault that he's eating the puppies?
Right.
Or is it the person who's drove up a truck of puppies and started feeding them to the alligator? And so it's not that I view China as benign politically or socially. It's that China's ambition is logical from their standpoint and known and knowable by Bill Clinton and Bob Rubin and everybody that did all those deals in the 90s. And they knew what they were dealing with, and they made a conscious decision to align with that power, with that force in China at the explicit expense of America.
Yeah, they have a long history. I mean, granted, shorter than America's, but they've been around for like 80, 100 years, somewhere around the time. Yeah, the current government of
China's
China.
been around for a long time, but
Right.
they've had a lot of like
And so
regime changes.
they can pretty much act in like predictable ways because we understand after studying them for so long, we kind of understand their motivations and so that's why he's saying
any
it's like
country's motivations to
we
get ahead
drove
in
up
the global economy.
We drove up the truck of puppies, which I guess is the American middle class, and just started throwing it to China, knowing full well that the economic benefits that they're going to receive are going to be enormous. So of course they're gonna take them all. So we got sold out.
Yeah.
So blaming China is no different than blaming the Republicans or the Democrats.
Yes.
It's like the
Because
Cold
when I
War.
blame
when I was
China,
telling people about,
China just magically
made
is
up this
exploiting
whole
America.
Russia thing.
Well, how in the heck can China just randomly do that? Guess what? They can't. But when the global consumer demand for every screen in the world, not just Apple, comes from China, when all global apparel comes from China. I mean, I'm not going to run everything that comes out of
Right.
China, whether it's pharmaceuticals,
Soon it's gonna
etc.
come from space.
The Chinese didn't bring that
Don't
there.
worry, y'all.
The Americans brought that there.
Soon all our materials will.
Yeah,
come
China
from outer space.
China didn't come to America selling their shit. We went there and bought it or made them make it for us.
Yeah, we're like, here, you make this, and then we'll buy it. And they're like, okay, good deal. And they're gonna keep making it because we keep buying it.
So, this is a good quote from Kier. We love the NHS, and this is something I hear. It's like the first thing anyone
Americans don't understand.
No.
what it
Anyone
is.
who, if you know anyone who comes from a country who has a national healthcare service and they come to the United States, the first thing they say is like, "Yeah, I get all my healthcare stuff done in the country." Like where when I go back, and it's like, yeah, it just must seem insane to people that don't live here how expensive healthcare is.
We didn't have insurance when we were growing up, and then when I went to Cuba, and I got insurance through my school when I went to university. Because it's expensive. And then when I started working, you would go with my job or whatever. But then when I went to Cuba and I showed up, it was my first week, and I had some kind of like infection in my eye. Like they took, and I didn't even speak.
Oh yeah, Cuba.
Spanish
The
or
country that the
anything,
U.S.
and
embargoed.
They sent me in an ambulance from my school to Havana to see an eye doctor to get medicine off. I'm like, how much is this gonna cost? And they're looking at me like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, because in America, we're used to paying for things, except for soda refills and napkins at restaurants. But for the most part, yeah, everything costs money.
Yeah, they were looking at me because I was like, I'm not going in the ambulance. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
You have to go to the ambulance. You have an infection in your eye. And we have to figure out which bug it is so we can give you the right medicine. And
Yeah.
you can only do that in Havana. And I was like, oh, but that's so far. How many miles is that? What do we do? Like, what? And then some American student had to come up to me and be like, oh, it's so different here. It's all covered by the government. I was like, have we been kidnapped?
They're like, yeah, you're in Cuba.
On a tropical island. Oh, maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah,
It's only a prison if you make it one.
if a small country with like, I don't know, I'm just gonna ballpark like a tenth of the United States GDP could do it. Well, you know what? You know why we have to do it? It's to keep the big pharmaceutical and hospital companies and private insurance companies making money.
We built this crazy fast car,
Yeah, do it for the oligarchs.
and we just want to keep it going instead of trying to.
Everyone, do your part and just die.
The problem is that's not the problem. People do die. The problem is we don't let those old ideas die.
All right. Well, today we were supposed to be celebrating a SpaceX launch, but it got postponed. But one of the coolest part of that launch was seeing the Tesla cars load up the SpaceX astronauts and then take them to the SpaceX the rocket with the capsule to take the astronauts up there. And it's like, it's such a cool achievement in two industries by one man. And anyways, so I put together a bunch of clips of the Cybertruck because I think it's cool. Jay Leno recently drove one with Elon Musk.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, let's take a look at the Cybertruck.
Let's take it for a drive. Don't mind me, I'm just driving Elon Musk around in Tesla's new Cybertruck. This job is the worst, isn't it? I mean, it feels very much like any other Tesla. You've got instant acceleration. The greenhouse.
Wow, 0 to 60 in less than 2.9 seconds with 500 plus miles of range.
Let's get one, guys.
Super fast.
I love how open
start
it
a
appears
Kickstarter.
to be. And how close is this to what it will look like in production?
At Tesla, we always want to have the production car be better than the show car. It always drove me crazy when manufacturers would come out with this cool-looking show car, and then the actual production car would be way worse.
Right.
And you're like, man, you got us all excited about this sweet-looking car, and then the production one is terrible. We won't do show cars that aren't real. So I think we got the proportions here pretty close.
What would you change on when it finally reaches production?
The windows.
What do you think you would do?
We're 5% too big, and if we just take all the proportions and drop them by about 5%.
Oh, you mean all the way around?
Yeah, so it's got to fit in a normal garage.
Right.
Yeah. And there's lots of little
Yeah, it looks
details
really wide.
that people wouldn't necessarily pick up consciously. Just improving visibility.
tall.
Having the glass like this is actually quite
He
hard
looks like
because
he's
it's so
high.
sloped.
Is that a special kind of glass? Is that different
Oh, yeah.
than normal windshield glass?
We are going to be using effectively a form of armored glass for the car. And the door panels of the car are the 300 series stainless steel, and it's
are they?
so tough
Right
that
next
it's
to
bulletproof to a handgun.
LA.
And why is that important to you that it be bulletproof? I mean, I
This is
don't.
badass.
Bulletproof.
Well, yeah, okay.
Super cool.
That's super cool. I like that answer. It's a good answer.
Do you want your truck to be bulletproof or not?
Yeah, I guess
Sure.
I guess I want my truck to be bulletproof.
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. But, you never know. When the apocalypse comes, you'll be glad it's bulletproof.
I love that back. It's just all one window. It's like they're sitting in a greenhouse, they were saying. It's like driving a spaceship.
Be a
You
leader
need
in
it to be bulletproof because we will be out in places where we'll be like shooting guns anyways.
Well, Tesla makes like the safest rated cars too. They're like the Volvo of our
I know.
day.
So if we're gonna buy all that acreage, we're gonna need a truck that's gonna be able to go over it,
I know.
even if it's flat.
Well, that's why we made
Land.
a YouTube channel to hopefully make enough money to get a Cybertruck.
Eclipse technology.
Exactly.
More exciting stuff.
There's your SpaceX headquarters right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
Hawthorne.
Oh, they're in
Boring
Hawthorne.
Company tunnel starts just there next to
the
SpaceX
Boring
parking
Company.
garage.
Oh, is that
Such a
right?
dog.
How long is that tunnel?
That's
It's all
about a
about
mile and a half.
transportation.
Wow.
The Boring Company is another one of
1.4
Elon's
miles.
innovative
Obsessed
ideas.
with
He
moving
envisions a
himself
tunnel system
faster
designed
from point A to
specifically
point B.
for electric vehicles to help alleviate the overflow of traffic above the ground.
I wonder if we might be able to take the Cybertruck through it. That would be kind of nuts. You
Can
want
we
to do
take
that?
the Cybertruck through it?
Well, maybe. This will be quite interesting to see if we can actually fit it down
Maybe.
there.
I'm sure you've
Let's
tried
try it.
already.
That's what I say.
Yeah, life's an adventure.
Welcome to the Cybertruck unveil.
So this is the actual unveil. Some
We created
cool
an
details in here.
exoskeleton. Nice. Now hit the Cybertruck.
It's pretty
It
good
sounds way different.
because I
What
hit a
else
lot
can
of
we
stuff
do
with my car.
With this truck. Let's shoot it. That's a 9mm bullet shot at the door. So it's ultra hard, cold rolled stainless
Where did
steel
the
alloy
bullet
that
go?
we developed. We're going to be using
Is
the
it
same
bounce
alloy in the Starship
No, I think
rocket
he just has a clip.
and in the Cybertruck.
Oh, it hit someone in the.
Let's show the glass demo. So first, this is regular glass. This is like normal glass, car glass. We want to show you what happens with normal car glass. Now I'll show you Tesla armor glass. Yeah. Yeah, so still doing it. I guess. Franz, could you try to break this glass, please? Yeah. Sure? Yeah. Oh my fucking god. Well,
Good
Maybe that
thing
was
we
a
didn't
little
try
too
with
hard.
real bullets and someone inside.
If that thing has a lot more mass than a bullet though, and the ball
But it
didn't
doesn't
go
go
through.
as
It
fast
didn't go
nor as
through.
hard
That's
at
a
the.
plus side.
It didn't go
Let's try
through,
it, right?
but a bullet would
Try
have
that one,
gone
really?
through.
Okay.
Ah,
Sure.
Look, he
man,
only
it
like
didn't go through.
barely got it.
still, the ball didn't go through.
All right.
I think you can stop a bullet. Maybe one.
Not bad. Room for improvement. In addition, the car has an adaptive air suspension. The rear is 100 cubic feet, 6.5 foot length, bed length, up to 3,500 pounds of payload. So let's see on-road the performance.
Zero to 60, 2.9 seconds. Quarter mile, 10.8 seconds.
In terms of off-road performance, it's going to have the best angular approach angle, best clearance heights,
It
best
does.
departure angle. For people that really
Best
go
what
off-road,
angle?
this is going to be great.
Approach height, and so if you're going down an incline, if your bumper sticks out too far, you're gonna hit the bottom before your tires do.
Yeah.
And
I
so
hate
you
those
see-
bumps where I have to go at an angle, otherwise my bumper's gonna go.
Yeah, so the
one
angle
tire
from
at a
the
time.
tire and the hood or the front of the car is
So that when
is
you dip
pretty-
down, it will never.
Yeah.
You can take.
So
a steep-
approach angle is what he
Yeah,
calls
yeah.
it. 15
And the
or
rear
35
one.
degree approach angle.
Oh yeah.
So apparently this car, when you're fording
See,
a
that
river,
will help us through those dirt roads that aren't where the the water makes this
Yeah.
huge bump. It'll get over those easy
and he said
without getting stuck.
in a tweet, if you're trying to like ford a river, the car will even float for a little bit.
Yeah, remember the Saab got stuck in the.
All right.
Basically, do the Baja Rally in this thing.
It's so cool.
It's 420.
Ranges.
Oh, 420. Happy 420, Kier. Thank you for joining us. Happy 420, everyone. Wherever you are. What is that? Chicago? Oh, right. Sorry. Classic 420 air horn. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's keep going with the Cybertruck. 250-mile range, 300-mile range, and 500-mile range, depending if you have a single motor, dual motor, or triple motor configuration.
So obviously, it'll have access to all the superchargers, be capable of more than 250 kilowatts. We'll reveal the actual number later. And it has onboard outlets for 110 and 220 volts. And as a little plus, because it's got an air suspension, we can tap off the air suspension, so you have a pneumatic source. So you have yeah.
So does that mean you can pump your own tires?
You need an onboard air compressor. Of course, it will come with autopilot standard.
Autopark.
Yeah.
Nice.
When is it supposed to come out?
2021.
Look, everyone take pictures.
Yeah, that starting price is basically the lowest other than the Model 3. The Model 3 starts at $3,500. And so for $4,000 more, you can get a Cybertruck.
That's the price without any incentives. That's just like the price without any incentives. Yeah, so you can order now if you would like. How does this compare to a Porsche 911? Okay, we're going to give the Porsche a little bit of a head start. Yeah, this is a current edition Porsche.
Beats a Porsche 911.
And this is the actual truck.
It's like half the price.
CGI. All right, thank you. Oh wait.
And it's a cool truck. I want the ATV vehicle behind it.
We also made an ATV. So.
Yeah.
So cool.
For our desert oasis we'll be building.
I wonder if you have to. Oh, that's so cool. That thing goes up.
And it has its own ramp.
Yeah. Very handy.
What? I still have the ramps for the Titan.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Oh my god.
We need to get that. And the camping stuff.
So
he plugs it in.
You can drop real low.
And you can charge it from the truck.
Pull this load mode. So you got load mode, you got a built-in ramp. So you can take a ATV or dirt bike, whatever you want, and load it on the back. Yes. Oh, and it's currently plugged in.
It's currently plugged in and charging. That's what he says.
Wow.
Oh, I want one so bad.
Yes. That would help.
I mean, to work with. I mean, it's also it's so cool.
Desert build.
Yep. He made a rocket. He made a bunch of cars and a cool ass truck. What can't you do, Elon? Well, I guess I don't know. Be cool, maybe. We make fun of him a lot.
PR.
Oh man, that was fun.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Special thanks to Kier for tuning in. We love you, buddy. We appreciate all the support.
Yay! Happy 420. We're your buddies.
Yeah, it was that was fun. We'll be back tomorrow. Stay safe.
Oh, yeah, tomorrow's Thursday.
Remember to take your coronavirus prevention medicine. It's important.
COVID prophylaxis.
Yep. And if you don't have buds, wear your buds. We'll see you tomorrow, everyone. Take care.